Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. South Korean President Lee Jae Myung is currently on a state visit to the Middle East and Africa, a diplomatic journey that's turning heads not just for its defense or energy deals only, but also for its emphasis on culture. From the launch of a UAE K-City project to university K-pop clubs and Arabic translations of Korean poetry, Korean culture is no longer a side note. It's become a center tool of soft power. But as South Korea deepens its engagement with these regions, critical questions now emerge. So what does real cultural presence actually look like, and how do we build trust, not just a trend? Today, we take a closer look at how Hallyu is unfolding across the Middle East and Africa and where it goes from here. For this, we connect to Robert Lawrence, senior researcher at the Institute of Middle East and African Affairs. A big welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
And also joining us is Kim Mok-yeon, Associate Professor at the Institute of African Studies at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here with you tonight.
So let's start a discussion with the Korea-UAE summit. Dr. Lawrence, so with the joint declaration that's entitled A New Leap for 100 Years of Partnership, I wonder, how do you see this as a stepping stone, not just for defense and energy, but also for cultural diplomacy in the Middle East?
Right. So the declaration builds on prior cooperation, such as the UAE's Baraka nuclear power plant project and the deployment of the OC unit. But, it explicitly advances 8 priority sections, some of which are not, they're outside of the energy and defense spheres. More specifically, it includes AI, semiconductors, healthcare, education, space, and cultural infrastructure. In terms of AI and technology, the pact encompasses joint data center construction, AI supply chains, and semiconductor collaborations. So Abu Dhabi has invested a great deal of time and effort to make the UAE an AI hub, and it's recently signed these big deals with NVIDIA and Microsoft. So, South Korea, being a tech giant already, signing on to be a part of the Stargate initiative, for example, it further cements the relationship moving forward into future technologies and AI infrastructure. Culturally speaking, the people-to-people relationships. They're going to launch youth internship exchanges and deepen educational, tourism, and healthcare ties. There's also this initiative to build a K-City for K-wave industries in the UAE. So overall, I think that this framework, it marks a bit of a conceptual shift from the traditional energy security nexus towards a deep, multi-sector, long-term strategic relationship.
Right, definitely. So one of the things that you said that stood out the most was the UAE K-City, a multi-sector hub for K-culture, food, medicine, and innovation as well. So Dr. Lawrence, what do you think this project actually represents in terms of a soft power architecture, and how could it shape regional narratives?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the UAE is very fertile ground for Korean cultural diplomacy. Just a week before the summit, the Korean Tourism Board's 2025 K-Tourism Roadshow was there. There are 4 Sejong Institutes there, which are, Korean language institutes and culture institutes. There's a Korean Cultural Center in Abu Dhabi. 2 weeks ago, they had the 13th annual Korea Festival. And I think they have a dream concert coming up this weekend. So, public diplomacy, Korean public diplomacy, especially in the cultural sphere, is very active and very well received in the UAE. This proposed UAE K-City, it kind of transforms Hallyu from being a media-driven cultural export to being a locally embedded institution. This K-City can establish kind of a personal, physical hub through which the Korean education, industry lifestyles, and creative sectors are continuously produced and experienced. So this shift, it's a bit of a broader move in Korea's contemporary soft power strategy towards locally based cultural infrastructure. And this kind of creates sustained contact zones between societies and enhances long-term cultural familiarity. It also will facilitate co-production, which is a crucial part to the whole project. Emirati and regional actors will be able to participate directly in content creation and talent development. So this kind of collaboration increases legitimacy of soft power projection because it avoids asymmetric cultural diffusion. In that sense, it becomes more of a platform for shared cultural creation. As far as the regional influence goes, I think it shapes the narrative in two ways. First, it positions South Korea as a long-term Gulf partner, not only committed to trade and technology, but to cultural exchange. And secondly, it kind of reinforces the UAE's role as a Middle Eastern cultural and innovational hub, in enabling this Korean Arab co-produced content to circulate across the wider MENA region. So, it'll deepen bilateral ties with the UAE, but it also accentuates Korea's regional cultural presence.
So with all of this, it seems as though the growth of Korean culture in the Middle East isn't just about watching or just buying. It's really becoming a two-way exchange. Student clubs, translations, and local initiatives we're seeing. So, Dr. Lawrence, what do you think enables that kind of cultural reciprocity in the region? And could that become a model for other regions as well?
Okay, well, in the Gulf, this phenomenon's there are causal variables on both sides. So, for Korea's part, its public diplomacy is very well organized and very deliberate. Cultural diplomacy is one of the tools in Korea's public diplomacy, and I would argue that in the region, it reigns supreme. There's a great deal of money, time, and effort that are put into these institutions and initiatives in order to foster this good image. And frankly, they know their audience. Regionally, there are a lot of young people who are consuming information in the digital space. They're aware of global trends, and they want to be a part of it. Simultaneously, Gulf states have their own reform policies that are transitioning away from carbohydrates and towards industries like tourism, finance, and technology. And they kind of want to shed that former image of extreme conservatism and demonstrate that they're accepting of other cultures and they're part of the global community, which they've been very successful in doing over the past 5 to 10 years. So these factors kind of combine to create a great deal of interest in Hallyu, which in turn spawned a genuine interest in Korean culture down to a grassroots level. So, while in the Gulf model might not be applicable everywhere, I think certain aspects of it are. Specifically, I would say that the co-production and collaborative ventures really do reinforce mutually beneficial results and diminish any space for negative narratives to grow.
Definitely. So picking up from that, Professor Kim, there's growing interest in extending these kinds of momentum, Korea's cultural momentum, also into Africa. How can Korea avoid copying and pasting its Middle East model and instead build an approach that actually fits to Africa's unique social and cultural dynamics as well?
Reciprocity is definitely also important in Africa, but I'll get to that in a moment. But if we are looking for a model of cultural cooperation that truly aligns with local needs, I would say a job creation model will be powerful and sustainable in Africa. Across the continent, young people are facing severe job shortages, actually. In many countries, 6 out of 10 citizens are under 25, and formal jobs just can't keep up with the number of young people entering the workforce. At the same time, the cultural and creative industries, such as music, film, digital media, gaming, fashion, are one of the few sectors showing strong growth and employing more young people than other sectors. So what happens when we bring this together? Africa's content and creative industries are already a multi-billion-dollar sector with huge youth employment potential. If we bring Korea's creative strength together with Africa's young talent, we may see a kind of K-Africa creative job corridor taking place in Africa. In this model, young people get trained in digital and creative skills, move into local studios and startups, and work with Korean partners to produce music, web series, animations, and games that can reach audiences not only across Africa, but also around the world. I actually teach a course on Korean history and digital content where students learn how to turn history into creative digital products. In this class, we discuss the ways of this creative adaptation, but also ways to interpret history and think about sustainability in meaningful ways. I mean, I invite students to engage with ideas on a deeper level. And I think Korea can bring a similar approach to Africa. We bring Korean content for African people to watch and enjoy, but also equally important is giving young people access to the tools, the curriculum, and the creative techniques behind those products so they can enjoy K content and also create their own work inspired by K content. And ultimately, this model only works if it's reciprocal, where Korea shares its strengths, but also learns from Africa's creative energy, perspectives, and stories, making the partnership truly mutual.
Right, a very important point you're making over there. So South Korea's K-content industry linked with Africa's job market. And also the most important thing is understanding each other's backgrounds, of course. So Africa's middle class is often actually framed in numbers, but many say that we need to understand how people live, like you said, understanding the background, of course. So from your perspective, Professor, what are the real life markers that Korea should be actually paying attention to when reaching an audience?
I think there are a few very concrete everyday markers that matter much more than an income line on a graph. One is how people actually access media. Do they stream on a personal Netflix account, share a friend's login, or mainly watch free-to-air TV or YouTube on a cheap smartphones? That tells you whether K content should come as full drama on OTT, short clip on TikTok, or dubbed shows on local TV. And a second marker is language in daily life. And this goes far beyond the official languages of like English or French. What really matters is the language people use when they joke with friends, argue online, or relax at home. It's often a mix of local languages, regional slangs, or youth dialects. So in many communities, a lot of everyday conversation also happens in church groups, mosque communities, or neighborhood gatherings, each with its own linguistic tone and cultural references. If Korea wants K culture to resonate, it has to reflect these real language spaces. Another important marker is how middle-class people actually spend and save. Many African middle-class youth still support parents or siblings, face unstable jobs, and live with a lot of financial anxiety. So they often look for affordable mini luxury, data-like content, cheap but meaningful experiences, small pieces of merch or fashion, not high-priced concerts. So Korea should also look at where they hang out: malls, campuses, churches, co-working spaces, cafe, music festival. These are the real hubs where K culture can be localized through events and collabs and pop-ups.
Right, taking a closer look into the differences in language and the latest trends of their interests is very important in this matter. Now, like Professor Kim has mentioned, African youth, urban, mobile first, and digital native, these trends are rewriting consumer trends lately. So, Dr. Lawrence, what do you think it would take for Hallyu to fully embed into that mobile-centered lifestyle?
Yeah, so this is a global trend that has local needs and nuances. In Africa, Hallyu is probably going to need to transition from a broadcast-oriented dissemination model to more of a mobile, optimized, locally relevant, and maybe co-created content ecosystem. Central diffusion has been shown to be more successful than traditional export models. And this could come in the form of short clips or streaming, tailored to regional bandwidth constraints. Also similar to the K-City model we talked about before, collaboration and co-production, they really do enhance sustained engagement. So I think it would be a good idea for Hallyu creators to develop local partnerships. A lot of which, Dr. Kim was just talking about. I agree with her totally. I think you could create some sort of regional fan interaction where Hallyu is a bit more active in the everyday local digital arena and less of a niche import.
Definitely. Now, Professor Kim, we are also seeing some Korean dramas like The Penthouse and The Fury Priest airing on the national television in countries like Nigeria. What does that shift from online to mainstream TV actually tell us about how Korean storytelling is being localized and received there?
So definitely the move from online streaming to primetime national TV means K-dramas are no longer niche interest for small data-rich urban audiences, but they're becoming household content that whole families can watch together. When K-drama make it onto national broadcasters, it means programmers believe Korean storytelling is reliable ratings material, strong enough to compete with local dramas and Nollywood, telenovelas, and Turkey series. It also shows how K-dramas are localized as part of the everyday media diet. They are dubbed, subtitles, scheduled after the news, promoted in local languages, and discussed on radio, church groups, campuses, social medias, right alongside local news. That tells us audiences aren't just importing Korean stories, but they're appropriating them, comparing characters to their own politicians and pastors, turning lines into memes and fitting the plots into local moral debates. It signals a shift in how gatekeepers see Korean content, not as something exotic for online fans only, but as a profitable, family-friendly genre that can carry advertisement, shape primetime slots, and even influence local production styles.
Right. It does really show that Korean storytelling is resonating far beyond niche audiences and also being seen in also part of their daily lives. Now, when you talk about strategy, then there's also increasing agreement that a one-size-fits-all strategy won't actually work for Africa. Why do you think is a city-based approach targeting places like Lagos, Nairobi, and Johannesburg so crucial for long-term engagement?
A city-based approach is crucial because Africa's cultural, economic, and media landscapes are driven by cities, not by national averages. Those cities function as their own ecosystems with distinct identities, youth cultures, media preferences, and creative industries. This matters even more when we look at Africa's rapid urbanization. Citizens are growing at the fastest rates in the world, and as more people moved into urban centers, the cultural styles, tastes, and habits born in these cities often spread outward to smaller towns and rural areas. So in many countries, what starts in Lagos or Nairobi eventually becomes a national trend. Cities are also where infrastructure and influence are concentrated. This is where you find the digital hubs, ad agencies, fan communities, creative studios, university, and influencers who determine how foreign content is interpreted, remixed, and localized. So if Korea wants longer-term engagement, it needs to plug into these environments, working with Lagos TikTok scenes, Nairobi's animation startups, because that's where cultural momentum actually forms.
So city-level strategy really sounds to be more precise and probably more sustainable over time as well. Meanwhile, education, language learning, and co-production are also emerging as key elements of long-term soft power. Dr. Lawrence, what role can these actually play in deepening Korea's cultural relationship with African societies?
Well, in short, these tools can shift cultural relations from occasional consumption of K-culture to deeper institutionalized partnerships. Education programs generate durable networks. Scholarships, vocational training, university partnerships, they give Africans real experiences in Korea and hopefully shaping favorable perceptions that later influence political and economic cooperation. by expanding STEM collaboration, joint degrees, and technical training tailored to African development needs, Korea can strengthen its image as a credible long-term partner. Language learning, further reinforces these ties, establishing more King Sejong institutes, supporting local teacher training, and integrating Korean into some school systems can widen access to Korean media, technology, and cultural practices. Co-production is a theme that we've been over tonight a good bit, but I think it's very important. It really creates the most reciprocal form of soft power, I think. Joint film production, music training, esports development, and collaborative research, they foster a shared ownership of products and innovation. So these partnerships, they counteract any perceived asymmetry of one-way cultural export to Africa. So, these types of initiatives can transform Korea-African relations into a mutually reinforcing cultural partnership.
Exactly. So it's not just about what we export, it's about what we create together. And we will look forward to new opportunities in that regard. I'm afraid we'll have to conclude our discussion here tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Dr. Lawrence.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Professor Kim, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.